On this episode of Locked On Angels, is this Angel team any different than the teams from the last 10 years? Is this team any good this year? And when is it okay to actually start to buy in? We've got a lot of questions, and we're going to bring some answers. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to give back to the Super Halo Bros for all the Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe and become a Locked On Everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube and leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation. And this episode of Locked On Angels is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins.
Happy Tuesday to you, and thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, with the off day yesterday, we had the chance to kind of take a breather and ask some important questions now that the Angels are 9 games in and 6-3, having won 3 series in a row. Before we get to that, of course, it's our 4th season as the host of Locked On Angels. We're here Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. Any way you slice it, we're here talking Angels baseball every single weekday. We had a fun idea, and we're going to get to it in our 3rd segment. How did Royals fans sound prior to 2024, during the offseason, before things got started? And we're saying that because it sounds a lot like what Angel fans are often saying, and we'll talk about how things shook out for them. When can we buy into this team, Mike? And also, you may have heard fans say it, this team feels different, but are they? Let's get into it.
Yeah, so Everydayer Brian messaged us and asked a really good question. He said this: around this time, people usually say, this team is different, right? That's usually the statement that a lot of people make, but it's always the same. So what's different about this team in 2025? So we put this team into 3 different categories. 3 categories, all C categories: culture, competitiveness, and courage. And so we're gonna
love the alliteration
like that. We're going to talk through each of those to help answer the question, is this team different? So, Johnny, let me start with culture. Logan O'Hoppe shared with Erica Weston before the home opener that the day off between them leaving St. Louis and then coming home and playing on Friday night for the home opener against the Guardians, that they were texting. The players were texting back and forth because, in Logan's words, they missed each other. And it had been just one day, right?
Yeah.
And so you're thinking, like, didn't they fly together? And right. I guess they just kind of did their own thing maybe that day, but they missed each other. And O'Hoppe said that they were texting and were excited to be back together again and to play on Friday night. And this is just one of a few examples of the narrative that's coming out of the clubhouse. Now, Logan O'Hoppe was also on our friend show, the Foul Territory podcast, and they were asking him about the cell phone ban. Maybe you've heard of that, where Wash said, hey, nobody can have cell phones inside of the clubhouse, right?
And AJ Pierzynski was ready to jump all over this and attack, and he was going to come after Logan for it and thought it was silly. But Logan had him changing his tune by the end of that conversation, right, Mike?
He did, and he did say, like, this was a collective agreement. They all were on board with it. But one of the things he said as he was talking with the boys at Foul Territory is he shared a very similar narrative about the culture, the team unity. He said, we're doing the right things, and it's been awesome so far. And in regards to Wash's leadership and team unity, O'Hoppe said, there's not one dude in that room that's not on board with what this team is doing. And so those are just 2 of multiple examples that are out there right now where the players are talking about how things are different in the clubhouse compared to last year and seasons prior to 2024. And it seems like Logan O'Hoppe is leading the way in a lot of those conversations. the big question, Johnny, is that this narrative obviously can be influenced by winning, right?
Mm-hmm.
The culture being exciting can be influenced by winning. So my question to you is, so what's really shaping this culture? Is it the winning so far, or is it the attitude that the players are choosing to have, and the fact that they're buying into being a team that's unified and wanting to be around each other?
Yeah, it starts with the attitude, Mike, because a lot of this conversation starts before they go 6-3, before the season starts. And so if you just look at the timeline perspective of it, I think it has everything to do with the attitude. These guys are on board with what they're going through in spring training and working together. He said there's not one guy in there that's not on board. Mike, the one guy who was in there is Anthony Rendon. Keep that man as far away from this clubhouse and this culture as possible. There was talk about, oh, is he going to pop by and see the Angels when they're in Houston? No, stay home, Tony. You've been doing it for 5 years. Stay away, stay home, enjoy your family, enjoy your paid time off, and leave the culture of this team alone. Finally, Mike, I think what's shaping the culture in terms of attitude is everybody understands the assignment, right? Brought in veterans to be veterans and also to be mentors. Travis d'Arnaud to Logan O'Hoppe, Kyle Hendricks to the pitching staff, right? You brought in veterans to mentor these guys. Kenley Jansen, not only to earn some saves, but to be the anchor of this bullpen and help guys like Ben Joyce along, right? And so they understood the assignment. They all came in with a purpose of, hey, we need some like improvements in these areas, but we also need you to be guys that can guide this very young team along. And then the young guys that are there are excited to get into a full second season together. I know Zach Neto's on his way back, but I think he's only going to help make that better.
Right.
I think that you look at somebody like Tim Anderson, who, we were not thrilled with him batting 5th in the order on opening day, but he understands the assignment. Like, hey man, like you've got a track record of a lot of good, and in the last few years, a lot of bad. Right. So if you want to turn things around about your narrative and your playing career, then you know what you need to do on this team, and you know how you need to operate on this team. So all that to say, Mike, everybody understands the assignment.
Yeah. So here's a follow-up question then. Do you think that the guys that they got rid of were guys, and this is not a slam on them, but were guys that struggled to buy in, and that's why they're not on this team anymore?
Well, I think that in the second year of Ron Washington being there and trying to create a culture, you said it on the show before, it takes 3 years for your fingerprints to actually, show up on a culture. And as a leader, you have to have some time for that to sink in. And so, I mean, yes, I think probably there were some guys that maybe didn't have buy-in, but I can't say for sure. I think it has more to do with the fact that this is year 2 for Ron Washington, keeping the staff together, keeping the coaching staff together. And so, yeah, and it's a young and hungry team. I know that they've had their superstars around this team, Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani, but the young guys know that if they want to go anywhere, it's on them to do it.
Now let's talk about that second word, competitiveness. So we talked about culture. Let's talk about competitiveness. The Angels have been in every game so far this season, and even the games where they lost 8-1 to the White Sox and 12-5 to the Cardinals, the Halos were not out of it until later in the game. In fact, 8 of the 9 games that they've played so far, the Halos have scored in the 7th inning or later. And in 5 of those games, the runs scored were either to take the lead or to add on to the lead. Now, last year, and this is just the Mike Frisch eye test, last year, the eye test tells me that our Halos really struggled once they got down. They struggled with coming back. Their shoulders were slumped. Their attitudes were terrible, right? And so, question to you, how much do you factor into this team this year? How much do you factor the desire to change the narrative around this team? How much is that playing into these key moments late in the game?
Yeah, I think it's a 10 out of 10 because these guys want to come through. They're young. And again, Mike, I've said it before. They want to have a narrative shifting season. It begins and ends with them. I'll go back to the foul territory interview where, AJ was poking fun at Logan for the cell phone thing. And he says, so no cell phones in the clubhouse, huh? And Logan goes, Oh, here we go. And didn't that speak volumes to you? Because it did
Yep.
to me.
Yep.
It was, all right, what are we going to do to pick on the Angels now? And what are we going to do to,
And Logan even said that. Logan even said, like, it gives people all sorts of fodder to go after the team. And he said, yeah, I get that this team doesn't have a great narrative, but now they're just looking for anything and everything to pick us apart and to make fun of us.
Yeah. So for them to go out there and actually communicate and change the narrative with their bats and their play on the field, I think that definitely factors in.
Last word that we chose was courage. And we use this word because last year, the young guys tried to play a lot of what Wash called hero ball, wanting to come through in matters where it was really important, in situations that were really significant. And it seemed like they really struggled. They got overwhelmed, according to Wash, in those moments. It's why we didn't see some of the young guys in the middle of the lineup, which is why I love to see Logan O'Hoppe at number 5, because he's starting to really thrive there. Now, this hero ball seems to have shifted this season, and it seems to be a bit more courageous. And what we mean by courageous is that in big moments, there used to be a strikeout or a pop out and not coming through. Now those big moments are turning into productive outs, like a sacrifice fly, moving runners over. In fact, the Angels, Johnny, are second in the league in sacrifice flies. And Everydayer Dwayne on YouTube said he's seeing kind of the same thing. He wrote that it used to drive me crazy that the Angels would get runners at third base with less than 2 outs and then not score. Dwayne, you're not alone, bro. Like, we were all with you. And he said, you guys mentioned in the bottom of the 7th of Sunday's game, they had 2 sacrifice flies. Rengifo had one, Soler had one. And in fact, Soler had one that came after an intentional base on balls to Mike Trout, which is so important. So it's nice to see that they're scoring despite the Guardians trying to avoid Mike Trout. And so we're seeing some courageous decisions on the offensive side, but also, Johnny, we're seeing it on the defensive side too, aren't we?
Yeah, the Angels are third in the league in inducing double plays. So that's great in terms of the pitching staff. They're in the top 10 for the best fielding teams this season. Top 7 in errors committed, meaning they have, the 7th lowest amount of errors committed, which is good. And then on the pitching side, they rank 13th in leaving opposing runners in scoring position. So that's significant as well. Everydayer Brian wrote to us and said, a difference I've seen this year is in the starting pitching. They may have bad days, but most of the time they give you a chance. And that's new. The last 3 years, half the games were over by the 3rd inning. And ain't that the truth, man?
Yeah.
Because sometimes it was just the game got started. By the 3rd, you're down 7-2, and you got to work and claw and climb your way back. So, Mike, are these numbers evidence of the maturing process by this young team? What do you say?
Yeah, I think it's 9 games in, and yeah, we want to see a larger sample size, but I think that this is why you bring in Ron Washington, because Wash is great at the fundamentals. I know that there's been some questions, from us included, about his decision-making as a manager, although I've seen him make some good, flexible, and agile decisions the last couple of days, which I appreciate, but Wash is really good at making sure that these guys are playing boring fundamental baseball, and they're finally doing that. Last year, he came in and it didn't sink in, and I think because of the injuries and because of some other circumstances, we didn't see it fully played out. This season, there's been a whole off season, spring training, and now as we start the season, you're already seeing a very different team just on the defensive side, let alone pitching and offense. So yes, I think that this team is really maturing. My question to you, Johnny, is Trout is playing, and he's playing pretty well, and he was able to move to right field and do that in a humble way. Do you think that Trout's impact, being healthy on the field and being in the lineup, do you think that he is having a major impact in some of the stats that we've shared?
We've talked a lot about Trout needing to be the locker room leader, and how everyone always says, well, he leads by example. He's the quiet leader. And we're like, well, we need a loud leader. We don't need a quiet leader.
Right.
Mike, I think they have their loud leaders in Logan O'Hoppe and Zach Neto. But I bring that up because Trout has led by example. You want to talk about hero ball? I'm not sure that Mike Trout has, number one, I won't say that he's never been the hero, because he certainly has been the hero.
Sure.
But what I mean to say is Mike Trout is the perfect example of reading the room, letting the situation play out and doing what's best for the whole of the team. If he's up with runners in scoring position and it's the bottom of the ninth and he's got to take a walk because he's not getting anything good in the zone, then he's going to take a walk, Mike. He's going to hit the sacrifice flies. He's going to do his best up at the plate. So I think that in terms of Mike Trout being on this field, I think that that's his influence. He is leading by example. He is a quiet leader. So I feel like the Angels have the best of both worlds now, and it's really great to see him out there. You can feel the impact he's having on this team, and leading by example is, hey man, you're not going to hit that home run every time, especially if they throw you crap. Sometimes it's better to take the walk, keep the line moving, and let the guys behind you come up and do some damage as well. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up, can we buy in to this team yet? When can we buy in? Well, we've got stats and numbers and information to back that up, and we'll get into that in just a minute.
The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on all of the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you're going to get $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel is making it so easy for you, whether it's picking your favorite team to win or maybe you're diving into the player props, from three-pointers to steals to assists. FanDuel has so many ways to bet on your favorite player. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine a live prop bet into a same-game parlay for a chance to win really big. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 bonus today.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. We thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day, and it's time to listen to what we got for you, because this is a conversation that Mike and I were thinking about for a while, and it's, when can we buy in? When is it good enough to say, hey, I like this team. I think they can do something this year. I think that they could, go far this year. I thought they could sneak into the playoffs before the season even started. I still stand by that, by the way. So you can call me delusional. You can call me, a hopium addict. But when they're staring down the barrel of a wild card, I don't know, Mike. I'm just gonna, I'm you know what I'm gonna do? I'm sit here and eat goldfish while you do the whole show. I'm just gonna, I'm just over here, sipping my tea or whatever. Look, it's 9 games in, but the Halos look pretty good. So when can fans start buying in? When can fans start to believe again? Remember the hashtag, in 2021, we believe. And I was like, that's the last thing I want to do with this team. Right. So get us started, Mike, with this conversation. When is it okay to buy in?
Well, first I want to address 2 statements that fans are making. The first statement is, when the Halos played the White Sox, the narrative was, well, it was the White Sox, right? Now the Halos are 6-3, and the narrative is, well, let's see what they do against, and fill in the blank, the Rangers, the Astros, right? And so I get, as a fan, sometimes you're like, can I buy in? Because if I do buy in, somebody's right there to whisper in my ear or yell at my face and tell me, well, they just played the White Sox. I mean, what do you expect, right? Or somebody's standing by my ear and going, I know they beat the Guardians, but they got to play the Rangers, who are 8-2. And you feel like you can't celebrate your team. You can't have a good time, and you can't be joyful about the fact that the Angels have had one of their best starts they've had in the last 10 years, right?
Sure. Yeah. Well, and look, I get the idea of, let's see them play some good teams, but here's what I get frustrated with. It's the idea that, they beat 2 out of 3 of the White Sox, right? They get 2 out of 3 with the White Sox, and people go, well, it's the White Sox. But what would you be saying if they went, 0-3 against the White Sox? It's the White Sox. They should be beating these teams. Right. So it's, it's a catch-22, danged if you do, danged if you don't. Right. And so it doesn't matter how these things shake out, whether it's, in favor of the Angels or not in favor of the Angels. If they swept the White Sox, then people will go, well, they should sweep the White Sox. So which is it? When am I supposed to be happy? What are we talking about?
Frustrated, high-pitched voice John is one of my favorite versions of John. So the question is this team good, or are they not good, right? Here's the reality. You mentioned it. They beat a good Guardians team. They handled 2 teams, the Cardinals and the White Sox, really well, like good teams should. And so far, I think the answer is this team has shown to be pretty good. So will they continue to be good? And when can you, as an everydayer, start to buy in? Well, this isn't going to be about emotion, and this isn't going to be about feelings. This is going to be about stats. So, Johnny, let's give a few stats that will help our everydayers know when they can start buying into this Angels team.
Yeah, let's talk about run differential. And I think we had Locked On Everydayer Nathan bring this up too, and he said that's something I like to pay attention to. Right now, they have a -1 run differential. That means they have scored 46 runs, but they've allowed 47. That's over the entirety of these 9 games, right? So you have a lot of, low scoring games and losing to a bunch of runs from the other team or vice versa, right? So that's why there's a -1 differential there. That needs to improve.
Yes.
For context, the Astros scored 740 runs last year and allowed 649 runs. That's a run differential of a positive 91 runs total in favor of the Astros. However, for reference, the first place Rangers are also at -1 run differential entering yesterday. They've scored 33 runs and have given up 34 entering the game, and their record is 8-2. Mike, last year the Angels had a -162 run differential. And nobody count on us doing the Mariners special where you can make the playoffs with a negative run differential, because that's how they got into it. Was it 2 years ago they made the playoffs? So it feels like a lifetime ago. Oh, darn. So anyway, yeah, nobody count on that, because they have a killer pitching staff.
Right.
So that's how that shakes out. And then the second stat, Mike, is wins against teams 500 or better.
Yeah.
Last season, the Halos went 40-58 against teams above 500. And if we aren't going to believe in this team, then they're going to have to step up and help us to believe by beating the good teams. It doesn't have to be dominant. Last season, the Astros won the division, and they went 41-43 against 500 teams or 500 and better teams. So it doesn't have to be this, world-beating team. Even going a little bit under 500, you can still win the division. But Mike, talk about the third stat, wins against teams under 500.
This one frustrates me the most because the Angels just struggle against bad teams, right? And you got some specific details, but last year, John, the Angels went 23-41 against teams 500 or worse. And for reference, remember the Astros won with 88 wins in the American League West.
Yeah.
They went 47-30 against the bad teams in 2024. And so you have to beat the bad teams in order to be successful. And to go 23-41 against teams under 500 is just pathetic, isn't it?
Right. And here's what's frustrating too, and I've brought this up on the show before. The teams that the Angels did well against last year all happened to be playoff teams. 3-3 against the Yankees, 2-2 against the Dodgers, 2-1 against the Mets, 3-0 against the Padres, 4-3 against the Tigers, a 14-9 record against 5 playoff teams right there.
Wow.
And then these are the teams they struggled against last year. 1-5 against the Twins, 2-4 against the White Sox, 0-3 against the Reds, 1-2 against the Cardinals, 1-2 against the Nationals, 3-4 against the Rays. Mike, 0-7 against the Blue Jays. That's an 8-27 record. There's 35 games for you right there.
Right.
That you should be 27-8 to against those teams, right?
Right. Fourth stat, Johnny, is one that is probably one of the most important, if not the most important. I think the next stat actually is probably more important, but I think this one is at the top of the list, and it's wins against AOS teams.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, the Angels struggled against AOS teams except for the Mariners. Because
what's that record again, Mike? What's that record?
They were 8-5 against the Mariners last year, and
the
Angels went 63-99 last year. I rub that into my friend Ethan all the time. Versus the Astros, the Angels were 4-9, Rangers 4-9, and even the A's, they were 5-8.
And here's the thing about that. They were 500 against all of those teams, except for the Mariners, in the first half.
Yeah.
Against the AL West, they were pretty much 500. And all the games they lost in the second half were with the Eric Wagaman version of the team or the Jack Lopez version of the team. So if you think this team is worse than last year's team, well, you're a little delulu. But number two, if last year's team can go 500 in the first half against the AL West, then this team in 2025 absolutely must go 500 or better, at least in the first half, if not the second half, if they still are all together and not separated at the trade deadline.
Here's the final stat to pay attention to, and then it'll help you to buy into this team or not, and that is series wins. They need to buy into winning series, and I'm going to tie this to it as well, Johnny. Monthly wins. The Angels need to buy into winning 2 out of 3, right? That's a great pragmatic strategy to be good. And then they also need to buy into winning 14 to 15 games a month, right? Because that'll get them to high 80s, low 90s if they're going to be a playoff team. And we did a whole show about they're probably going to have to hit at least the low 80s, maybe mid 80s to even sniff that third wild card spot if they're going to make the playoffs. And if they're going to try to win the West, they'll probably have to do high 80s, low 90s. So they need to win series, and they need to win 14 to 15 games a month.
And where that gets tricky is like in a month like July, where you have the All-Star break. And so you have less games to try and win 14 to 15 games a month. So that's a significant part of the schedule as well. So our question for you, to our everydayers, is what makes you believe? When will you start believing? Leave that in the comment section, whether you're watching or listening. Come on over to YouTube, get in the comment section. We'd love to hear from you. And we'd love to hear, when will you start believing?
Went to work out last week, and I pushed myself way too hard at working out, and got really dizzy and had to lay down, and everybody saw me, and
it's go time.
I was having a heart attack, right? And it was pretty embarrassing and ridiculous. And then the gym owner came over and said, "Do I need to call 911?" I'm like, "Nope, I'm fine. I'm getting up." Well, what I realized I did, John, was I went to the gym just with an empty stomach. I had woke up early that morning. I didn't drink any water, and so my body was just exhausted. So what I've done now is every time I go, I use Just Ingredients, and I use their pre-workout because it fills me with all sorts of nutrients and gets me ready to go. And then after I'm finished, I drink their protein shake, and it's actually pretty good. Just Ingredients prioritizes wholesome, nourishing ingredients without any of the artificial junk. And I didn't need that on the day that I was feeling a bit woozy. I need all natural things. And so whether you're recovering after a workout or you need an energy boost like I did, their grass-fed whey protein and pre-workout deliver real results. And trust me, it's real results. It helped me not to embarrass myself at the gym anymore. So visit justingredients.us/Bryce Harper and use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB for 20% off your order. Again, justingredients.us/Bryce Harper and use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB for 20% off your order. And for more wellness tips, follow @just.ingredients on Instagram.
Mike, I love me some Angels Reddit. It's one of my favorite things to, poke around in and see what's going on and see, how people are feeling. I love the live game threads. I also love that after the Angels win, one comment says L, and then the reply to that says T, and then the reply to that says B, and the reply to that says U. Nice. So it's always a tradition in the the post-game threads. So just for fun, I hopped on over to the Kansas City Royals Reddit and found a thread from before the 2024 season. I actually found a couple of threads before the 2024 season. This particular post stood out to me. It was titled, "Do you guys have hope for 2024?" Mike, why don't you read some of these responses for us?
Yeah, so they said, for growth next year, sure, but our pitching aside from Riggins and Singer is awful. We have a lot of work to do. I don't think we're going to make the playoffs. Remember, 2024, before they started playing. I also don't think the Royals will splash the money to extend Bobby. He'll eventually be traded or he'll walk following club control. There's no evidence that the Royals were signed Bobby to the money that he deserves. Also said, I think that we'll at least improve into third or maybe fourth in the Central. Not a big accomplishment. Someone said, maybe I'm paranoid. I'm nervous that the front office may not be interested in making any types of moves for us to be in contention before the stadium deal is set. And some people said, I'm always excited about next year, but I don't have much hope other than Bobby Witt and Vinny Pasquantino and Freddie Fermin and some of the rest of the players. I feel like we have a lot of taxi squad dudes. Somebody wrote that Salvi looks cooked, that
Mhm.
MJ Melendez continues to struggle. Cole Reagans has been incredible. Singer looks better as of late, but I think that they should move him to get a couple of good prospects.
Not just
Even
him, but them. Singer and Reagans.
both
Yeah.
of them. And then somebody said, even with the pitiful state of the AL Central, I think the team will be lucky to win 10 more games than they did in the previous season. All of that was before the 2024 season on Royals Reddit.
Here's another one. What would a good season for the Royals look like in 2024? Someone said, I think 500 or close to it would be a massive step. But the more I look into this team, the more I'm convinced that it's achievable. Somebody said, I'd say 75 plus wins and improvement from the young players. Somebody else said, I think either 7 to 8 games below 500 would be a win for me. Definitely 500 is a win. Remember, they were coming off a 56 win season. Somebody said, obviously, I'd love 500 baseball, but prioritizing growth from the young guys. If we falter, but have big seasons from Witt, Reagans, Melendez, Vinny, I'm totally good with it. If we win some games on the backs of our vets, but our young guys can't cut it, I think we have some big problems for the future of Kansas City baseball. Somebody said, make it into the playoffs, acquire some pieces for a championship push, and win the World Series. That's my hope for every season. Otherwise, I believe our farm system is poor. We move guys at the deadline and build a better team for next year, and then do it again and again and again and again. So, Mike, now that we've read all these comments, here's the funny thing.
Yeah.
Bobby Witt did get his contract extension. In fact, that was in February of 2024. The Royals finished 86 and 76. They got a wild card spot. Salvador Perez was not cooked, as they said. A 271 average, a 330 on base, a 456 slugging, a 786 OPS, 27 home runs, and 104 RBIs. Taxi squad guys, well, other than maybe Hunter Renfroe and Adam Frazier, most of the guys they brought on stayed as backups because their young guys actually did well. And speaking of which, the Royals went 18 and 13 last March and April. And let's look at the comments about the Royals schedule. Looks like we get a head start on 100 losses this year. You're the Royals. Every series is brutal till the A's come to town. And then somebody said, look at this first month of the season, 8 and 23 or 10 and 21. And that's a brutal schedule. And May doesn't get any better. And they ended up going 18 and 13 across March and April. Mike, doesn't this all sound so familiar to you?
Yep. This is just copy and paste for the Angels pre this season 2025, because obviously the fan is going to be a fan no matter what the team is. And the narrative is just everything sucks and we're not going to be good. Right. And I get, because of history, that's going to be what has been pounded into us. But it's really interesting to hear what Royals fans said about the Royals before their good season last year and what Angel fans have said before this season. And that's why I'm really hopeful that this season could be good, because I love when the narrative starts to shift and people don't know how to talk about this team because they're actually pretty good, right?
Yeah. So look, again, 6 and 3, just getting started. They got to keep winning series. They have a big test in front of them. But again, find out when you feel like you can buy in. And the fact is that there are actual measurements that can help you buy in. And every team goes through this. Every team has the doubters and all of that stuff. So I just thought it was funny because, Royals have the season that they have. That's all we need. We need a narrative turning season. And if this could be that year for the Angels, even if they don't make the playoffs, which they will, I think that they need a narrative shifting season so that they can stay relevant for next year as well.
Thank you for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Now for your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. You can get local analysis on the national scale. You can find Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Did you see me last night on the Game Night show? I'll be there tonight too with Jake. It's going to be a lot of fun. Hey, give us a follow on Twitter at Locked On Angels and connect with Mike and I at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Mike, what do we have on deck for Wednesday's show?
What happens when Zach Neto gets back, Johnny? Are they going to DFA somebody? They're going to move some pieces around. We have a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about that and the game and a letter that the Anaheim mayor sent to Artie Moreno all tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
Dear Artie. No, I'm just kidding. All right, friends, we hope you have a great one, and we'll see you back here on Wednesday. Until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, everybody, and we will see you back here on Wednesday.
Dear Artie, you want to meet me at the Starbucks? I'll buy you a chai.
Don't do that because Mike, one of the guys got in trouble for that, Carpino.